Prediction 1. Muhammad predicted the Mongol invasion of Muslim lands. He said the Muslims will fight the Turks, whom he described as a people with small eyes, red faces, flat noses, faces like shields coated with leather, and who wore shoes made of hair. First, let us note that the word Turk does not refer to the people of the land that is known today as Turkey, but rather the Turkic peoples of Central Asia, who comprised a large part of the Mongol Golden Horde. Then, notice how the Mongols' physical features perfectly match Muhammad's description of them, as having small eyes, red faces, flat noses and faces like shields. Also, there is the curious detail about them wearing shoes made from hair. That is a reference to the shoes made of animal furs that the Mongols wore. The prophecy about the Muslims fighting the Turco-Mongols was fulfilled 700 years later, in the 13th century, when the Mongol Golden Horde invaded Muslim lands and conquered the areas of present-day Iran, Iraq, the Caucasus, parts of Syria and Turkey. Muhammad knew that hundreds of years in the future, a Turco-Mongol army would invade Muslim lands to wage war against the Muslims. Prediction 2. Muhammad predicted the skyscrapers that would start appearing in Arab cities. He said barefoot, naked, destitute shepherds, that is, the desert Arabs, would one day be competing to construct tall buildings. This amazing prophecy was fulfilled only within the last 3 decades or so, when skyscrapers and high-rise buildings started appearing in Arab cities, including Mecca. In fact, some of the world's tallest buildings are located in the lands of the Arabs. The tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, standing at 828 meters, is presently located in Dubai. The tallest clock tower in the world is in Mecca, and it directly overlooks the Kaaba. What makes this prophecy so amazing is that for most of their history, the desert Arabs in general have always been poor, illiterate, tent dwellers who herded camels and sheep. The Arabs have never been known for building monuments. Since skyscraper projects are incredibly costly, it would also follow that Muhammad also knew that the poor Arabs of the desert would one day grow very rich overnight. And indeed, that is what happened when petroleum was discovered in Arab lands. Prediction 3. Muhammad predicted the appearance of talking shoes and communication technology. He said that the straps of a man's footwear would speak to him, and that a man's thigh would inform him of matters concerning his family. 1400 years ago, the very idea of a person's footwear speaking to him would have been considered too absurd to even think about. But now, in the 21st century, talking shoes have become a reality.
I love the feeling of wind in my laces. Here we go. Are you a statue? Let's do this already. Call 911 because you're on fire.
You are looking at brand spanking new shoes, but not just any kind of new shoes. These ones are a real technological marvel. Think of these Nikes as talking shoes.
I'm here with Kate Packer. She's part of the talking shoe team. Is that right? Is it talking shoe?
It's a talking shoe.
Actually calling it talking shoe.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Nice work.
So what kind of sensors do we have in here?
Well-known companies like Nike and Google have developed shoes that literally talk to the person wearing them. The last part of the prophecy is about men being informed by his thigh about his family. The phrase, "his thigh informs him," is very clear reference to mobile phones that men keep in the front pockets of their pants, directly on the thigh. The very notion of a man's thigh informing him of matters concerning his family was unimaginable in 7th century Arabia. Yet, 21st century technology has made it a reality. If a man living 1400 years ago foresaw these things, it was because he was a true prophet. Prediction 4. Muhammad predicted the Muslim victories over the pagan Arabs, Persians and the Byzantines. At a time when the Muslims were weak and few in number, and facing a constant threat from the pagan Arabs, Muhammad made a stunning prediction, that the Muslims would not only defeat the Arab pagans and conquer Arabia, but also defeat the mighty armies of the Persian Sassanids and Roman Byzantines. Within Muhammad's lifetime, the Muslims conquered Mecca and much of Arabia. This is well known. But what is truly amazing is that only a few years after Muhammad's death, the Muslims simultaneously attacked the mighty Romans and the Persians. In the mid-7th century, the Muslims defeated the Sassanids and conquered Persia. And then, between the 7th and 11th centuries, Muslim armies went on to defeat the Byzantines in a series of battles and took control of the regions of the Levant, Egypt and North Africa that were occupied by the Byzantines. These victories were astonishing and occurred against all odds. The reason being, at that time, the Muslim forces were vastly outnumbered, and lacked the weapons, equipment, training and experience of their opponents. Muhammad was a prophet who knew that the Muslims under his command would rise up to become a military superpower who would defeat and conquer the pagan Arabs, the Zoroastrian Persians and the Christian Romans. Prediction 5. Muhammad predicted public fornication and a rise in STDs. He said that there would be a prevalence of open illegal sexual intercourse, that is, fornication in public spaces. While fornication has been practiced in all societies, it almost always took place in secret and in private. Yet, Muhammad predicted a time when the moral standards of many societies would drop so low that fornication in full public view would become common. This has most certainly been fulfilled today in many cities, where people fornicate in public places such as nightclubs, public transport, parking lots, parks, concerts and so on. Perhaps, it can also include the pornography epidemic. After all, pornography is nothing but footage of people fornicating before a camera for the sole purpose of being seen by an audience, that is, anyone with an internet connection. He also said that fornication in the open would lead to the appearance of new diseases. Sexually transmitted diseases like AIDS and chlamydia appeared in the late 70s and as a result of sexual promiscuity among both straight and gay people. Muhammad knew that sexual immorality would increase in the future and that it would result in new diseases that would spread rapidly among those living a sexually immoral lifestyle. Prediction 6. Muhammad predicted a time when usury would be commonplace. At the time this prophecy was made, the practice of usury was a punishable crime in many cultures. For centuries, gold and silver, materials with intrinsic value, were used as currency. Then, paper money that was backed by gold was introduced. Those notes could be redeemed for gold. But in the 20th century, most nations abandoned the gold standard, and paper currency could not be redeemed by gold anymore. Presently, paper money is just legal tender and is printed by banks without anything of value backing it. Yet, this so-called money is lent to people. In today's world, everyone who has a bank account, or borrows from the bank or even uses a credit card is involved with usury. This is so because they must repay the loan with an interest. In fact, entire countries, even rich ones, are in debt to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, and are required to repay their lenders with interest. Usury is truly everywhere. Muhammad knew that in the world of the future, there would be a new economic system that would operate on usury. Prediction 7. Muhammad predicted a time when Arabia will become green with vegetation. He spoke of a time to come when Arabia would turn green with meadows and rivers. What makes this prophecy so amazing is that Arabia is a dry and hot place that receives very little rainfall. It is also a fact that most of Arabia is covered with desert. The fulfillment of this prophecy started only within the last few decades. Advances in irrigation technology have been changing the very landscape of the Arabian desert. Today, in the middle of the Arabian desert, there are lush green fields in which grains, fruits and vegetables are cultivated. This is shown in these satellite photos released by NASA. During the time of Muhammad, the very idea of lush green fields existing in the middle of the desert would have been a thing of pure fantasy. Yet, the Prophet knew this would take place in the future. Prediction 8. Muhammad predicted the colonization of Muslim lands by non-Muslim forces. He spoke of a time when Muslims will be great in number but at the same time too weak to defend against non-Muslims who would attack them. The fulfillment of this prophecy began when Muslim nations in the Middle East, Asia and Africa were invaded and colonized by non-Muslims, specifically, the Europeans and the Russians. Between the 19th and 20th centuries, the Caucasus regions was taken over by Russia. Algeria, Morocco and Tunisia were taken over by the French. Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Palestine and the Mughal territories was taken over by the British. Libya was taken over by the Italians. Indonesia was taken over by the Dutch. The conquests of Muslim lands continued even after World War II. In 1948, the State of Israel was created in Muslim Palestine. And in the last 3 decades, the United States invaded and occupied Iraq and Afghanistan. Notice that Muhammad said that the Muslims would lose to non-Muslim forces in spite of being numerous. If Muhammad was simply making wild guesses or speaking presumptuously, he would have stated that the Muslim defeats would be due to their low numbers. After all, the weakest countries are also the smallest or the poorest. Instead, he counterintuitively stated that the Muslims would be dominated by foreign powers in spite of having strength in numbers. The fact that Muhammad predicted that the Muslims would be defeated and conquered in spite of being numerous, proves he was indeed a true prophet, who was given exact knowledge of this event.